So in my current project, I've been working with planarians, which are hermaphroditic creatures that reproduce both sexually and asexually. The name of the process by which they reproduce asexually is fission, and planarians seemed particularly tricky creature to represent in human terms, and I was very interested in that friction. The last exhibition that I made was departing from fission, which is it's the name of the process by which some creatures reproduce asexually, more specifically in the context of planarians, which are hermaphroditic flatworms. Fission is the name of the process by which they can reproduce by regenerating a fragment of their bodies. I arrived at the concept by thinking about ways in which nature or scientific representations of nature to a large degree inform how we make sense of the human body. And therefore I was very interested in further exploring and trying to understand the limits of how scientific representations of nature can be probed or explored in a way that opens up ways to think about images, to think about sexuality, to think about desire, to think about broader ways in which we make sense of the world. In the context of my previous exhibition, Fission, I was working with materials that are derived from the natural world, which are used to enhance the human body and also carry very specific registers of sexuality and gender, such as whey protein powders and wheatgrass and testosterone gel. I was very interested in approaching the concept of nature, both through scientific representations of it and through the ways in which the concept of nature and the natural trickle down from scientific discourses about the body, be it human or not, to broader understandings of human behavior, to broader understandings of human sexuality, of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what is desirable, what is not desirable, both in the sense of behaviors and bodily shapes, bodily forms, bodily acts. There are many elements in the natural world that behave and that exhibit sexual forms that significantly challenge the ways in which we make sense of human. So if you think about the recent history of sexuality, at least in the Western world, scientific discourses about the human body and about sexuality have been at times extremely violent to certain modes of being, particularly queer modes of being, and modes of embodiment that did not fit into a neat binary between male and female. Planarians have been described in the scientific literature as immortal before, and that is definitely a concept that I'm very interested in. They are capable of regenerating lost body parts and forming entire new bodies out of small fragments of their bodies. And in a more conceptual place, I'm very interested in what they can help us think about in relationship to mortality and becoming different. I'm very aware of the limitations of anthropomorphizing planarians like that, but I'm also very interested in what can come out of this. I am making images of flatworms that I cut in different patterns and I've been making these images with a microscope at Columbia University. It's a scanning electron microscope that makes images without any light. It makes images with electrons. It scans the surface of the sample that goes through it, so there's something about the performative nature of images that can only be that for me can only be explored through sculpture and through materials, through materiality. There is a relationship between sculpture and photography that is very important to me in this research, between this separation of representations and the world. There is it in the violence that comes out of this act of making sense of the world. This act of making sense of the world in a way that creates a hierarchy between what's an ideal and what is forbidden, or what is desirable and what should be hated. So there is a tension between scientific imagery and the concept of objectivity and realism in photography, as it is geared towards what is deemed the natural world that I'm very interested in. So a question that I've been thinking a lot about is, what is the frame of the scientific image in the present? What are the institutional and representational conditions that allow it to do what it is intended to do? And that is something that guides me a lot when I'm installing the works, and I mean the traditional binary between what the world is and what we make sense of it is predicated on a binary between words and things, between representation and reality, and that's a binary that I'm very much interested in challenging, and it, to me, it's impossible to do that at this time without actually exploring or challenging the boundaries between images, representations, and materials.